Welcome to the Logic Exchange. Today's episode, The Culture of Growth, Leadership Lessons from the Field, features special guest Dan Austin, investor, entrepreneur, and C-level executive with 25 plus years of experience building high-performing organizations. Dan has helped companies, clients, and family offices leverage financial markets, treasury capital management, trade platform opportunities, and emerging technologies in tokenization, AI, and blockchain. He's led companies focused on FinTech, tort/class retainer acquisition, capital funding, e-commerce, and enterprise tech. He's held executive roles at Blue Modo Media, Unio Capital Partners, the Home Depot, Interpublic Group, TMP Worldwide, Vivendi Universal, and multiple startups, earning awards for performance, consistency, and rapid results. Not only that, he's a graduate of Sonoma State University, where Dan was also a two-year baseball team captain and academic All-American, a reflection of his leadership and competitive drive. We're going to explore the culture of growth and the lessons he's learned in the field. Wow, Dan, you've done a ton, man. We'll dig into all of those things, but let's jump right in and talk about partner strategy, evaluation, and lead origin.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure. I've been a fan of your company and you through our company for quite some time. So they're very lucky to have you. I know that you had a recent transition to a new role there, and I think that it's great, and wish you all the success, man. I know you're going to do so well there.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thank you. Quite honestly, it's been a breath of fresh air. I've known Amy and the team for years now, and when I was thinking of going out and hanging my own shingle, she hit me with a mic drop and said, "Well, what about coming over to join us?" And we were able to put all that together, and I couldn't be happier. I love the team here. I love the culture here. And one of my friends, so I sit on the board for the NLVA, and one of my friends in the compliance committee gave me a quote last year that I absolutely love, and that's culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you have to have a strategy, right? You have to have a game plan. You have to have a roadmap. You have to have those things. But if you don't have the right players, you're not going to make it there. And I'd rather take a team that's all rowing the boat the same way and go out and crush it than not. And so that's what we have at Email Agency and Law Logic. So I appreciate it. Thank you for the well wishes, man. And I've also been a fan of you and Tyler and Romano for quite some time. And so very, very happy to have you on the podcast and just talking about overall growth and strategy. And I hope that somebody listening or watching, by the way, folks out there in podcast land, if you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe. We'll be on not only YouTube, but also Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. So with all that, bud, let's jump in. Let's start with kind of the first one that I always tackle with everybody, which is partner strategy, evaluation, and lead origin. I think that's super important, especially with all the compliance and TCPA and everything that we all have to navigate at this point to make sure that we're staying compliant. Because at the end of the day, if it starts with the data, right? And if the data isn't compliant and it's not there, then you're probably not going to get the outcome that you want. So for first question, hopefully tee it up for you. But how do you vet and choose your marketing and intake partners?
It's interesting. First of all, I'm a big fan of Amy. I think Amy runs an incredible shop.
Yeah,
and kudos to her. This is like a journey woman who has gone through, all the ups and downs that this legal industry has to provide, and just swims through it with ease and color. And in the end, you're right. It's culture over strategy first, right? And so at the very core of everything we do comes from culture fit. So when I look at partners or vendors or firms to work with, first thing we always do is we want to spend time together. We're not just going to chase revenue. We're going to chase culture fit and how we can be the best partner. And sometimes just being the best partner to somebody it's not a one-way street, right? Like if you're a great partner, it's got to be received well. And so that's a little nuance that I don't think a lot of people focus on, especially as you see an industry growing like we're seeing in the Social Security disability space. A lot of the firms that were in tort and class action now, and then last year they were focusing a lot on MVA and PI,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're focusing a lot on SSDI. And I think what marketers miss is that they're it's sort of a horde, like a herder group. And when they see an opportunity, they all run for it, and they're thinking dollars. And that's like the last thing we think about. It's important. First thing first is culture. How do we mesh with folks like you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because look, marketing and retainers and building a book of business is never going to be perfect. Like it's never going to work 100% of the time. But if your adherence to culture fit, working through you and I and Mark had one just last week with your
Yep.
compliance officer.
Yep.
Could have been a very difficult conversation, but because you have good partners, and we're going through contract stuff, but if you have good partners that show up to the table with the right mindset, being like, let's play the long game together. Let's like put ego aside. Let's just find the best solution. Because in the end, all of this is really just about the claimant. Yes, we want to make money. Yes, we want to do great things with, our firms, and we want to grow, and there's exits and all this other great stuff. But in the end, if we have very, very happy, well-fulfilled claimants, we're all going to do very well. So culture is super important. Then I think when we select a firm, we want to get very close and intimate with what is their intake process, and what is their training like. If they're training people in their firm well, just like we train people in our firm, like we overemphasize training, because a very well trained person that's going to receive a claimant who doesn't really know what they don't know, they need to be led, they need to be handheld, they've got to be felt with, addressed with compassion and ethics, and really, them in mind first. So we pay very close attention to what's an intake process look like. And with that is metrics. If you have a really good partnership, they're going to look at us for what's our metrics. What's our quality of retainer look like? What's our quality of lead look like? What's our quality of traffic look like? What's our quality of landing page look like? What are our metrics? We look to our vendor, our firm partners and our vendors the same, although we don't really have vendors as it relates to a legal place. We have, in-house people, but we pay very close attention to what do their metrics look like. And if you can have those three things to start with that you can be very comfortable with, it will make for a really good long-term partnership.
I completely agree with you. I think the best part. Did you ever watch Ted Lasso? Did you see Ted Lasso?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Be curious, right? Not
yeah,
judgmental. And
right.
so one of the things that I always try to do in any discovery call is just kind of approach it neutral, right? And like I know what I want out of the call, but at the end of the day, that might not be what you want or what anybody else wants. And so trying to approach it in neutral and be curious and figure out a way to hopefully solve a problem. But you have to ask the right questions, and I love the just kind of approaching it neutral. And I got that from Keith Rosen. He was a business and just a life coach that we worked
Mm-hmm.
with back in the day. And his whole thing was approach it neutral because you know they're going to tell you what they want or what they need, or maybe even more importantly, what they don't want. And as long as you can ingest that and turn that into a relationship, it's going to work. If you can't, and you go in just completely blinded by your own opinion or the way that you want to do things, um, it can definitely hurt. It can definitely hurt a relationship. So
And
cool.
short-lived. It would be
Yeah,
super
absolutely.
short-lived, right?
Yeah, and it's a great segue to the second one, right? What separates a basic vendor relationship from a true strategic partnership in this space?
You know, I think law firms who are so cost conscious,
Hmm.
right? They try to, like price compression is like the first thing they want.
Yeah, the race to the
I
bottom, right?
Yeah, like I'm always a fan of, like, get the most amount of, value you can out of any situation. But I think if there's a commitment towards like quality, and I'll give you an example of that. You know, I met with a firm the other day, and they're scaling. They're an up and comer. They do a lot of cases a month, and they're climbing. They're growing and expanding. And first 5 minutes of our call was all about cost. And so I broke down for him why cost could be an issue for quality and for his intake center. Number one, if you're beating up your vendor on cost or your partner, and that cost, let's say the margin is super thin, because look, to get quality leads today, Facebook or Meta, Instagram, Google, whatever channel you're working with, that cost is going the opposite direction as compression. So and that's to get real quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you could go get bottom basement leads or bottom basement, traffic. But what's going to happen is you're going to end up spinning your wheels in the back office. You might sign retainers with those folks, but their stick rate's going to be really terrible.
Yep.
So I always say that, like, when someone values quality and values the work that you do as a partner, that's always a really good, sign that this is going to work out long term, because they understand cost of doing business. The other part is, if there's not a commitment to communication and a discipline around really over communicating, how's this working? How is this going for you? Let me tell you what's going on in the ad market. Let me tell you what's going on in the intake center. Getting to know each other is super important. And for us, we look for people that want long-term gains versus quick hits. Quick hits is something that's going to look good on a P&L from a quarter-to-quarter basis, but it's going to end up looking really terrible 3 years down the road, especially in this space. When you're in the legal space, most of the stuff that folks work on are, 24, 18, 12 months, 18 months, 36 months, in some tort cases. In class action, it's much longer. And so if you're going to be focused so much on like early wins at the expense of quality or the expense of true partnership, it will come back to haunt you. That is an absolute promise. And then, the last thing that I think is important, I don't know if it's the only thing, Nick, but like certainly it's up there in importance, is the idea of innovation. If the partnership is concerned with innovation in a good way, in other words, they're thirsty for it and they want to always test new things and try new things, not at the expense of like regular operations or consistent growth, but be willing to embrace innovation. I think that's really important.
Yep, I agree with you. It's one of those situations where you always need to be growing and always need to be learning. And again, kind of approaching in neutral, right? Like if you check your ego at the door and check the things that, we've been doing this for a while, but do I think that I'm the smartest guy in any conversation? No, I don't, because I feel like if I can learn from that, right? Like if I can take away one little tidbit that will make me even a half a point better, then that was a worthwhile conversation. And I agree with you. A lot of these firms, and I'm not going to name names, and I'm not going to use real pricing, right? But let's just say that somebody comes in and said, "Hey, I want this case, and they need it to be $2,500." Like, all right, cool, I'll do what I can. And like, I come back, I'm like, no, that's actually like a $5,000 case. That's not 5,000 on the front end, right? That's 5,000 after it goes through all of the QA, all of the QC, because guess what? You're going to be paying that anyway. Do you want to pay it on the front end, or do you want to pay it on the back end? And getting everybody to take a look at that metric and make sure that it aligns with their growth model is good, but also being open to having that conversation and being humble enough to having that conversation, I think is very wise. And I think that your point is spot on. You have to have those conversations and have to be completely transparent with those things so that everybody knows what they're getting into, because as you mentioned, these are relationships. It's not transactional. And some agencies and some firms treat this as transactional, and I just don't believe that it is. So with that being said, it's at the forefront of everybody's thoughts right now. Quality compliance. You just hit on it. but how do you maintain quality and compliance across multiple partners or channels?
This is an interesting one. I think a lot of people get it backwards. They scale and then worry about compliance. If
Mm-hmm.
it if it's so, we've been fortunate to be in this space for the last 6 years, and we start with a maniacal approach to compliance first and
Mm-hmm.
quality, even if it's at the expense of short-term revenue. And the reason for that is, let's say, like our flows are really compliant, but our ads are even more compliant before they even get into a flow, before we ever pass that on to a client or a firm. And if you start with a really good compliant methodology, and you start with like asking the right questions of the claimant, and a discipline and focus on quality and compliance, you never worry about how to scale after that, because or balancing the two, because you already have a great bedrock of
Mm-hmm.
quality, consistency, and compliance. And especially with all the legislation changes that are going to either happening now or about to happen, if you have a great foundation for that and then you scale, you'll balance between the two. And I think a lot of marketers, especially overseas, know that they're not going to be held to the same kind of standard. I mean, they'll on the surface level they would be, but like, try going after a firm in Pakistan. Like
Sure.
like like try to bring a suit against somebody in the Netherlands. It's possible. It's going to cost a lot of time and energy, a lot different than it would be here in the States. And certainly the legislative bodies are not going to necessarily be able to shut that down. They're going to go after the firm.
Yep.
And so we look at that as part of our, it's part of our culture cloth. Like, we have to be really good because we understand the risk, and we understand the vulnerability it puts a firm in. And in the end, if we're always staying claimant minded first, like, how many claimants can we get their benefits for? Like, that's the real metric that we should all be
Yep.
following, right? Like, if you pay close attention to that stuff, I think that everything would be fine. But it starts with, just get it done first, get it done right.
Yep.
Because long term, like, if we were short term thinking, we're just going to send a bunch of leads. We don't care about what we say on the front end. Let them deal with it. Here's what will happen: you'll have a great 6 months. Like, it'll be so fun. Like, you're going to make so much money, and then you're going to fall off a cliff. And if you're
Yep.
serious about being like a true partner and a true person in this space, you better be thinking 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And so that's going to impact how you behave on day one.
Absolutely, man. I completely agree with you. And it is the reason why, I volunteer my time for the National Legal Vendors Association.
Mm-hmm.
And why it was important when I came over to email agency that we were part of the NLVA, because quite frankly, the majority of my good friends in this industry are my competitors, but we are friends, and it's all about all ships rise, right? Like, if we're all doing the right thing and we're not putting the target on our backs, we're going to get left alone. It's the bad actors that come in that maybe aren't listening or simply don't care. And it's all about delivering the view the client wants. And if you have a second, I'll tell you a story of where I came up with that from. So right out of college, I also played college baseball. I played at Western State. Um, my dad owned a general. He was a general contractor. I'm sorry, no, I worked for a general contractor. My dad owned a floor covering company in Vail, Colorado. Right, so you
Yeah.
just assume the clientele, right? And he pulled some strings, and I had a summer job at it was R.A. Nelson. And so my job, I was the marketing assistant, which basically meant I put together packets and took clients to lunch and drove them around, right? That was literally my job. It was a lot of fun. But I remember this guy was building a home in Vail. Across, and if you've ever been into the Vail Valley, he was on the north side of I-70.
Mm-hmm.
So overlooking the ski resort, right? Or he was going to be. And so he pulls up in this old like F-100 pickup, right, with the lazy boy in the back of the truck. And I was like, what the heck is this, right? And he goes, Nick, come on, get in. We're going to the job site. I was like, all right, cool. So I jump in this truck and we drive up. It's about a 30-minute drive because we were in Eagle Vale, getting to
Mhm.
Vale. Nobody knows where this is at, but it was a drive. So we were talking, listening to music, and just kind of hanging out. And I know what this house was being built for. So I'm like, this is probably the most wealthy person I've ever sat in a vehicle with, right? And so I'm just trying to like soak up some knowledge. And we get to the job site and he asked me to help him unload this chair, this lazy boy. And I was like, okay. I mean, it's just framed. Like, we can't leave it here. But I was like, this guy's crazy. Like, I went from like, I'm going to learn something to this guy's nuts. And we unload the lazy boy and we take it into where it would be his living room, right? And he set it down in there, and he's sitting down and he's leaning one way, he's going back to the other way, he's crossing his legs, and he stands up after about 10 minutes. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this guy is absolutely off his rocker, no pun intended. And he's like, this won't do. And I was like, what won't do? Right? I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And he said, this is not the view that I wanted. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he goes, I wanted that view, not this view. And so what had happened is when they poured the footers and laid the foundation and started framing, they were about 7.5 degrees off of what had
Mm.
been agreed, which 7.5 degrees is not a ton, but when you're spending that kind of money, you want what you want, right? And so, long story short, he had them tear everything down and redo it. And from that moment forward, I was 18, 19 years old. From that moment forward, it was ingrained in me: deliver the view the client wants, and
Mhm.
that is absolutely like just woven into the fabric of what I try to do in my life, right? Like, if you just tell people the right thing and the correct thing and the truthful thing, you don't have to remember what you said because it's just the truth. And as long as you set a proper expectation, you're going to deliver the view that the client wants. So appreciate you running down a,
Yeah, that's
a little
awesome.
trip down memory lane with me.
You know what though?
But
That's that's really interesting. That perspective, and it's those little life moments
mhm.
that they set the terrain and the trajectory of like where we'll go as professionals. And it's really awesome that you got to see something like that early in your career. I have
Yeah,
I have
and
I
and
have dozens of those kinds of stories that put things in perspective on what's really important. I remember there was a time I was reading about Steve Jobs, and when
mhm,
he was a kid, his dad and he were painting a fence, and the fence backed up to another fence, and his dad, they were done, and so Steve's going to walk away, and we did a good job, Dad, great, right? And Dad goes, where are you going? Go paint the other side of the fence. Steve's like, what are you talking about? It backs up to another fence, nobody sees it. It's like, exactly, they won't know, but you'll know you didn't do the full job, you half-assed it. And I think if we, that's kind of a testament to what we do at our business. And I know what Amy instills, and certainly Nick, what you've deployed there at Email Agency is, it's not about all the front facing stuff. What do you do behind the scenes when no one's watching?
mhm.
Because that is a clear reflect. It'll reflect on you later in the public view also, if you keep that mindset. And so I applaud you for the way that you handle your business over there. I know that your clients and your partners will benefit greatly from that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. It's so much easier to just remember the truth, right? So
Right.
if you just tell that on the front end, it makes the whole relationship easier.
Yeah.
So that's actually another great segue, right? Like, what should buyers know about how a vendor is sourcing their leads? I know what my answer to this is, but I'm curious as to your feeling on it.
So it's really about who, what, where, and how much.
Hmm.
So like, again, if someone's buying traffic and they're getting leads from some obscure place that's like doing a lot of co-reg to generate leads,
Hmm.
and then trying to shape ship them into a format that works for a client, or, let's say someone who's providing leads to a firm, has a call center, and that call center is what's generating leads, and they're calling out on a list that has no idea why they're calling them in the
Mm-hmm.
first place, and they're trying to convert them. I always look at like who is doing the lead gen. And so, a lot of people have like layers deep of traffic sources. We don't particularly do that. We never have.
Mm-hmm.
We have, external media buyers, but they're dedicated resources to us. They're just a 1099 employee instead of a W-2 employee, but they work exclusively on our campaigns. And so I think that that's really important. Also, like, what are they buying? What platforms are they leveraging? Do they have their own wholly owned and operated sites in that legal space, or are they just driving traffic and then sending stuff over from a myriad of different, waterfall type environments? Is it a dedicated flow? Is it a flow that's just like an offer wall, and then someone logs in and they're not really sure, and so by the time the firm gets the lead, like, who knows what that lead quality is really going to be like? Are they coached? Where are they sourcing their stuff from? And I always find like a really good indicator of success, and this is hard if you're a marketer that's just getting started. I get that. What's your track record? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how much media are you buying a day? How much lead volume are you doing a day? What's your methodology for scale? What's your methodology for compliance? Do you have a compliance team? Do you have a compliance lawyer who's watching this stuff? Right? Like, so we have all of that. I know you do as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, buyers need to, you always hear this stuff of buyers be weary, right? And so buyers be weary of somebody who comes at them and says, if they're undercutting market value price by like 25%,
Yep.
like the other day, I was shocked about this. The other day, I heard somebody selling a cost per lead in the Social Security disability space for $12.
Wow.
I,
That feels like co-reg, or
I,
it feels like a rebrokered. That just doesn't
right,
feel right.
right. So
You
like,
can't even generate them for $12.
I know, I understand that. So like, my comment to them was, okay, that's great, but don't be intoxicated by what you think is a really great front end metrics. Think through things. Start to do
Mm-hmm.
your. If someone ever came to me and said, here is a 2026 Mercedes GLS AMG, and it's $30,000. First thing I would think of is, where'd you get it? How many
Mm-hmm.
accidents has it been in? What's wrong with this car? Like, that picture doesn't add up. I know that that's
Yep.
$100,000+ car.
Yep.
So if someone's coming in at that low of a cost, like do your homework and start to ask very tough questions. I think that buyers get intoxicated by like what they think is a really great metric, and they lose really crystal clear sight as to like what's going to happen with these leads, right? Or we'll get into that stuff later on cost, but
Yep.
for me, I would do my research on the who, what, where, and why, and how
Absolutely. Yeah,
much.
you said it much more eloquently than I would have. I think it's just transparency, right? You have to be transparent in how you're generating, and just pull all of the covers back, Nick. This is what we're working with, right? And be completely transparent. To your point, and I know it's a cliche, but cliches exist for a reason. If it's too good to be true, probably is, right? So, yeah, absolutely. So what information should firms or advocacy groups always ask a vendor before they start working with them?
What's your process for quality? Like, let me see what your SOPs are around compliance.
Hmm.
I think that would be a no brainer right off the bat. Um, where are you sourcing your traffic from? Where are you getting it? Are you buying? Who are you buying it from? Are they trusted resources? Do they have experience? Do they have a reputation in the space? Um, if they're buying traffic and arbitraging it, that's another question I would ask. You know, like, how long have you worked with these people? Things like that. I'd also ask, um, you know, what's your what's your tech stack or suite of services look like, or suite of resources look like? I think that's an important one. For example, if someone shows you that they have a landing page that looks super sketch, or doesn't ask all the right questions, but they're feeding you through leads that supposedly had asked all the questions, and they get really good at cloaking. I think, that's a sure tell sign, run. Like, you don't want to mess with that, right? But if
Yep.
someone has built a brand, like, we have national, disability benefits.org and a couple of others, but we have a brand that's recognized. It's something that consumers trust. How do, like, what are some of the things that they do to educate the claimant? I think, we go a lot of extra miles around here to really educate claimants, because in the end, is it about a dollar that we make from a firm, or is it about how best can we prepare this claimant going through our flow to give them the best shot at getting approved for a benefit they so desperately need? And if we're
Yep.
doing our
Love
job
that.
really well there, we're going to be good. So I would ask, like, why are you doing this? What is behind it? And if they don't mention what I just said in any sentence in that reply, then there's an issue.
Yep, I completely agree with you, man. I mean, you're in this space. Oftentimes, you're only as good as your last lead, right? But also just do the right thing. That's integrity, right? And it's doing the right thing when nobody's looking. That's the most
Mm-hmm.
important part. And then we talked about it earlier, but I think transparency is super important, right? Like, you don't have to be 100% in-house generated. You can utilize, like we do at email agency, we utilize our trusted partner network, but it's folks like you. It's folks that we've worked with for 10 years, and we know them, and we know that they're going to stand up for their product if and when there is an issue, because this landscape that we operate in, there's issues all the time, right? And are you working with somebody that's going to stand up and have your back when the chips are down? And with you and with some of our other trusted partners, we absolutely have that, and I think that that's super 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 important. So for the sake of time, because we're getting a little long winded, maybe we're showing the fact that we've known each other for a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
let's go ahead and skip to the next session, which is
Mm-hmm.
lessons learned and ethical sourcing. It kind of goes hand in hand with everything that we've talked about, but what are the biggest do's and don'ts that you've learned in legal marketing and intake in your career?
So I'm going to go like keywords on this. So maintain ethics, maintain a high level of training, optimization, and compliance. Do those things
Yep.
and make sure you educate consumers well on the way through to passing that off to a firm. Like, do that. Do not do shortcutting, like any kind of like corner cutting, or thinking you're bigger than the firm that's receiving your leads and you can get
Mhm.
away with stuff, or um, constantly, chasing revenue over quality, I think is a big, big, big mistake. And don't violate any legislative laws. Never.
There you go. That's a good idea. Yes, absolutely. I actually have I have four rules. And if you'll indulge me, like every time we go to like a high school graduation for one of our kids or whatever, I have four life rules, and I feel like they're pretty good. They're funny, but I think if you really boil it down, like it makes sense across the board, right? Number one, pay your bills, right? I think, and that goes with business too, right? So number one, pay your bills. Number two, wear deodorant. That is a personal rule, but also I think it's one that works in business as well, right? And your deodorant is you're being compliant. You're not going to be offensive to people around you, right? Um, Number three, don't do meth. We can put drugs in there. We can put whatever we want, but that's usually a pretty good rule. And number four, don't be a jerk, right?
Yeah.
People remember the way that you treat them,
Yeah.
and if you treat them well and you're a good partner, you're going to have a long lasting relationship. So you chuckled, and that's usually the response I get with my four rules, but I think they're pretty good rules.
Nah, they're applicable. They roll right over, man. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's see. Let's talk about ethical and compliant lead sourcing. And what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
So get real TCPA consent,
Hmm.
right? Like don't fake that. Just like pay very close attention to getting consumer consent. So I can send you an email, I can send you a text, I can send you,
Hmm.
a voicemail, I can do things that only benefit them along the process, right? Um, for sure, like no misleading ads. Do not,
Yep.
no deep fake stuff. Like I see a lot of people doing that in our industry. I won't name any names, but
Sure.
they do a lot of deep fake stuff just to get them to a landing page, and then it only ends up penalizing you in later. Um, we pay. This is like we never break this rule ever. When we provide a claimant as a lead source to a particular firm, that is an
Hmm.
exclusive lead for that
Yep.
firm for a period of time, right? If they don't do anything with that lead for a period of time, and it's not like 2 days, right? Like 30, 60, 90 days.
Yep.
Like don't sell that to anybody else. Like that's just asking for trouble. And then no coaching, don't incentivize people. Like send through righteous business, just business that like is intended to be there.
Do the right
Okay.
thing, right? Just do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. Awesome. Well, and going hand in hand with that, and I did send you some of the questions beforehand, so I'm going a little bit out of order
Mm-hmm.
on this, but I think that it actually plays properly. How do you balance volume versus verification when you're scaling?
So we like crawl, walk, run strategies. Even if
Hmm.
I have a buyer that's like, I need 500 leads a day, I'm like, great, we'll start with 25. We'll start with 50. Like,
Yep,
let's
yep.
let's get to know each other, right? Let's learn all about each other.
Swing small, miss small, right?
Yeah, right. Like, oh yeah, guy, I heard this the other day. I thought this was so awesome. If you bunt 4 times in a row,
Hmm.
you're gonna score a run. If you swing for the fences 9 out of 10 times, you're gonna make an out, right?
Hmm.
So I'd rather bunt 4 times than swing 10 times for the fences. I think that that also applies here. Compliance is like bunting, just like little tiny singles, like just get on base, and you'll end up scoring. And I think that that's you know important here. The other thing is like consistency. Don't get mired by like 3 days of data. Like be consistent over time, and then constantly improve your creative. Constantly improving creative is really important there. So you don't degrade the quality. Because the worst thing you can do is set an expectation with a firm, and then have like you're off to the races, and then all of a sudden your creative stops working, and now your lead volume starts to slump. And they remember firms invest money in capturing the leads that you give them. So if you're not improving or constantly optimizing, you're going to set your firm up for a rough place. So be really consistent with that. The other thing is like pay very close attention to data. Data always will tell you a great story, and so in marketing, it's like 3 parts data, 1 part look and feel or artwork, and so pay very close attention to data because it's always going to tell you a good story.
Yep, I agree with you, man. It's kind of like the 3 yards in the cloud of dust in the NFL, right? You do that 4 times, you got a first down. You're going to march down the field, right? So it's being very diligent in what you do. It's being very methodical in what
Mm-hmm.
you do, and also what you are expecting from your partners. Um, so jumping to kind of the third section of this, which is defining success and real performance metrics. This is actually one of my favorite questions as we go through because everybody's answer is always different, and I'm very curious what yours is. When do you know that a campaign is truly working?
I'll go back to what I just said actually. So like we crawl, walk, run is really important, but if I have consistent metrics that are not like hockey stick growth, but like I see a 10% week over week improvement,
Mhm.
or I have data that lasts 3 weeks, you know, that takes discipline, man. Like sometimes you'll see a campaign rocket ship and you're like, oh,
Mhm.
we're gonna crush it. Like this is amazing. And then
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? But then you look back, you're like, dude, that was like 2 days of data. Like,
Yeah.
let's do that for 3 weeks, and
Too
then
small of a
everybody,
sample
yeah,
size. Yeah.
and then everybody get excited, right?
Yeah.
So I always look for like consistent, month over month, week over week improvements, small improvements. But if you stack up a bunch of small improvements over a longer period of time, you got a big improvement on your hands, right? So we look for that. We think that that's really important. I, I know campaigns work well because I get regular feedback from partners.
Hmm.
If you have a one-way street on information, that's like a disaster because you're going to be flying blind. And that goes two ways, right? So you got to give feedback to your firm and your firm's got to give feedback to you. And that's how you know like you're going to ensure your success.
Awesome. Awesome. Love it. What is one underrated KPI? Because we're talking about some KPIs here. What's one underrated KPI most firms should track that they're probably not doing right now?
Contact rate, call times, minutes per call, multi-touch rate on the back end. And I say that because everyone looks at normal stuff, right? What's my cost per lead? What's my conversion rate? What's my click-through rate? What's my cost per retainer? What's my, retained to claim out, outcome? But all those things in the middle require you to have like really great intake training. So I think like agentic AI that can watch and listen to
Hmm.
calls and see how that data, synthesize the data at a much higher rate through AI, but pay close attention to like what's really going on with how those claimants are being handheld and how many times after they sign a retainer are you communicating with them, even if it's once a month, just to give them status updates
Yep.
or to give them some sort of information about what's going on in the industry. That will go a long way.
Absolutely. It gives them the warm and fuzzy, like they matter, right? Because they do matter. Every single one matters. And nobody wants to feel like just a number, right? And so it's those little touch points I think that really do truly make a difference. So we've talked a little bit about lead quality, actually a lot about lead quality, compliance and whatnot. And we've talked a little bit about scale. But how do you ensure that lead quality doesn't degrade as a campaign scales and as volume increases?
Great question. We're disciplined. Like it's hard to be disciplined, right? Like so discipline over motivation for us is like crawl, walk, run. If I'm sending you 50 leads a day versus 500,
Mhm.
I can manage the massaging of a relationship in the beginning, right? Like I can manage like how is your team receiving this stuff, right? So crawl, walk, run is really important. Consistency we think is also super important. Show up on time, like you said earlier, pay your bills, right? But consistently improving creative is also a really important piece. We
Mhm.
want to also, test, right? Like, so everything in the beginning is about fluidity, testing, measuring, crawling, walking, running, right? But through it all, we're going to stay very consistent in our ethics and in our core values around how we run campaigns. And that it sets a bedrock foundation for the ability to scale. And again, scale little bits over time. Don't try to scale too fast. Early on, we would try to scale a campaign from, you know, $50 a day to 15,000 a day in three
Mhm.
days. That's going to break a system, right? So
Oh,
set the right
absolutely.
expectation, right? Set the right expectation, grow, because when you look back in 120 days, your firm's going to be very happy with you and you're going to make a lot of money with it.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that's fantastic. Last question on this piece before we go into the next section. What proof points can marketing vendors share to confirm ethical sourcing and data integrity with their potential partners?
Yeah, things like Janaya or Trusted Form, the
Yep,
recordings from that is
absolutely.
always an easy one. Screenshots of ad accounts. I don't know if I would ever share my ad account necessarily, but I would certainly give data around like, our ads and how we're running it. I might give screenshots of like parts of an ad account to show them that,
Yep.
look, we actually really did spend this money. This is the ad we actually really did run. I think intake scripts are always good to look at from a firm's perspective,
Yep.
so that you can know how to optimize that.
Awesome. Yep. And we do all of those things, right? Like whenever we are either onboarding a new partner to help drive volume to us, we want to see those things, right? We want to know, for lack of a better term, who we're getting into bed with, right? And make sure that our name is going to be as safe as their name, which
Mhm.
ultimately leads to the claimant having a good experience, right? And at the end of the day, it's all about helping people. And if you're doing it properly, you're doing it compliantly, you're making a difference. And I think that a lot of us, yeah, we do this for a living to pay our bills and to grow in our career. But at the end of the day, I think that there's a bigger mission, which is ultimately helping people. And
Mhm.
at least for me, that's one of the things that I look at. I'm like, okay, this Tuesday, what a rough day, but how many people was I able to help today? Right. And that always makes me feel better. So
Yeah.
jumping into kind of the next one, man, this is where we're going to kind of look into our crystal ball a little bit, right? Because in order to see the future, you have to look at the past, but also be very aware of the present. And right now, AI is huge. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But what marketing innovation or channel are you watching closely in 2026?
Paying very close attention to SMS and telephony tech.
Hmm.
We think agentic AI is going to play a big role. We're seeing some of our clients today utilizing it in their
Hmm.
intake centers, and conversion rates are noticeably different in a very short period of time. So
In a
we're going
good
to pay
way or
very
a
close
bad way?
attention. No, in a great way.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, very very cool. One of my friends, his name's Rob Cam. He has a company called OnScript.ai, and
Mhm.
he does something very very similar. And that's one that I'm watching. Obviously, I think everybody has at least one eye on AI, and if you're not, then you're probably missing the mark right now. I actually heard a very interesting take yesterday on Claude, where they came out and they said that they're not sure if it's aware of itself. That's kind of crazy because if it's aware of itself, it's aware of what it's being utilized for, and that's pretty amazing. So it'd be very interesting. I did see a movie on that when I was a kid, so we'll see how all that plays out, right?
Yeah. No, we're
um,
we're big believers in AI.
yeah.
I've had the fortunate to be a really close friend of one of the industry's leading spokespeople for AI. He spends, goes around the world speaking about it, and so I get the benefit of hearing all the innovation that's happening. And I do believe that um, platforms like Claude are starting to learn themselves, but learn
Mhm.
how they want to communicate with you, and vice versa. So we're big fans.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, me too. I still like to write my own emails, but
Yeah.
sometimes I'll use it for some framework, right? And yeah, I think that as long as people utilize AI responsibly, it
Mm-hmm.
can be a very, very valuable tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are some telltale signs when it's not, right? And I think
Yeah.
at this point we've all learned them. But not only can it be fun, but it can be super efficient for workflows in general. So glad that you chatted about that. And as another continued segue on that, for automation and AI. How is that changing the way that you manage lead qualification or even claimant communication? Because we touched on that earlier as well.
Yeah. So tailored messaging and content
Mhm.
is one way we're looking at that. So, for example, if you answer a question a certain way, the next question you see is a little bit more tailored to you. Because as you know, people get confused by, you know, have you worked 5 years the last 10 years? They get
Mhm.
confused about that. They disqualify themselves all over the place.
Yep.
So we look at it like we're leveraging artificial intelligence to synthesize data and produce content that would better educate consumers along their path. And again, we go back to like, what's the most important factor here is how many claimants actually get their benefits. Well, the more informed they are, the more they understand. Like we use artificial intelligence to look at, you know, how are we collecting the most effective ad creative versus, let's say we have a set of 10 or 12 ads. Our team has put together a way of having an artificial and agentic AI look at creative and then match that back to conversion rate. And so how do we best showcase what's going to convert the best and the most ethical way, so that with the most informed claimant, right? Because that's going to cut on the time that an intake center has to spend sifting through the stuff that's not going to work versus the stuff that will work. So we use artificial intelligence heavily in process generated flow sets.
Awesome. I love that. And I assume that that is how you are seeing technology empower your lead sourcing. Would that be accurate?
Correct.
Awesome. 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 So let's jump into the future and then some philosophy to end real quick, right? So this next section is the future of legal marketing and claimant acquisition. How do you see the landscape evolving as privacy regulations and TCPA enforcement is tightened?
So there's two entities in a violation of TCPA that are at risk. The firm that generated the content on the beginning and the firm that accepted that information on the back end.
Yep.
So you're going to see firms, they're going to have to become way more compliant themselves, but they're going to have to pay a lot more attention to what are the practices of the people that they're receiving information from. That's number one. Number two, I firmly believe this, that training has to elevate. If you are not training your media buyer, your creative developer, the person who's running your websites, if you are not training your intake center on the rules of the road relative to TCPA, you're vulnerable, massively vulnerable to a violation. So I think that that's going to play a big part. And then, AI is not going to replace people that move an atom.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody that produces any sort of digital aspect, whether it's a piece of paper, whether it's a script, whether it's an action, it will replace that. So I think that if firms get really smart at leveraging agentic AI to become the compliance cops, like let's say you have a call center and they're saying all kinds of outrageous claims that are just purely not accurate. Well, if your AI is listening to that and giving feedback and saying, hey, this is one part of your script or one part of your call that you could have said it this way, which that exists today. Like we
Mm-hmm.
leverage that, right?
Yep.
Like AI coaching and compliance is really key. We also we have an AI running in the background of all of our creative development. So if an ad gets loaded into our platforms, Meta or what have you, to run an ad, but it didn't pass a compliance sniff on the front end based on all the checklists, we have a combination between agentic AI looking at that and human eye set. We're not quite there to trust 100% AI would do its job, but it can take volume and point out things to us where our humans can actually look at that. So I think that that's going to play a major part in where we're headed with all TCPA.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not necessarily trust, but trust and verify, right? Like
Yeah,
I think that that's super, super important.
yeah.
So one more on this one, and then we'll jump into the final section. What does the future of claimant acquisition look like to you from the seat that you're sitting in here in March of 2026?
You know, I think that there's going to be a greater partnership and a weeding out of pure vendor firm partner relationship. I think that separation is going to tighten itself. I think that one thing that we're paying very close attention to is private equity money entering the space.
Yep.
We think that as that begins to change, it's been there for a long time, but it's starting to really shift where they're taking a much more active role in where the placement of those dollars go. So I actually think, and we're placing bets around the ecosystem and really, being the ecosystem for all things. So think about it like this: if from claimant all the way through to payout, right? There are things in like, let's think about this as a manufacturing conveyor belt.
Hmm.
So you need money, you need someone to manage that money, you need a great marketing firm, you need a great firm then to go work with that dollar and that claimant. You're going to need great back end management and claim processing and claim awareness and touch points along the way. You're going to need an admin that's going to know how to, manage the money and pay it out all the way back to the private equity. And if there's transparency along the way and a governing body inside of a closed ecosystem, I really think that that's a recipe for massive success. Because when you can have, sort of, a footprint in all of that stuff. So whether that's a firm that has very tight closed, rather than a shotgun approach with many vendors, pick
Hmm.
like two that are really good at what they do. Pick a firm that has a really great intake center. Don't just always outsource that offshore. Have a tighter knit ecosystem around that, and then take big money in. We're placing bets in that's going to be the next recipe for massive success.
Absolutely. I love that. It have a plan, work the plan, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
really it's important. And it doesn't go into the face of what we said at the beginning, which is culture eats strategy for breakfast. No, no, no. Strategy and a plan are very different things, right? You have to have a strategy in order to create a plan, but you also have to have the people in order to execute that, right? But if you don't have a plan, you're just like, okay, cool, now what's next, right? Like, and you're just
Yeah.
looking around. Um, cool. Let's finish up with some leadership, culture, and some of your personal philosophy. We started out this with your intro, and you've done a ton in your career, and have led multiple companies. So, what is the hardest part of leading a marketing team in today's legal environment?
So I'm going to take this from the perspective of like growing growing a business and growing a team.
Hmm.
Um, because one thing that we talk about, there are a couple of things, like you want more, be more. I didn't say do more. Like if you want more, if you want to really become a head and shoulders above, firm above everybody else, whether you're on the legal side or whether you're on the marketing side, if you want more, you got to be more. And that means be more for your people, train them, coach them, like care, get to know their personal lives. You don't need to, be a psychologist to them, but really
Right.
like care about it, right? Like truly care about it. And I think a lot of people, when they scale, they grow really fast, they lose their culture.
Hmm.
So have that be like the bedrock, and don't be lazy with it. Like when I'm a leader, right? The more we grow, the more people we have in our firm, the more time it takes for me to get to know everything in our business. Like, yes, have leaders over a part of the business for sure. Like you want to diversify and delegate for sure. You got to do that. That's the only way to grow. But you got to keep your pulse on there. And the only way to spread your ideas of culture down through the ranks is you got to be that, right? So if you want more, you got to be more. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two,
Be intentional. Be intentional. Right.
100%. And then what we teach a lot of is when the group is about the individual and the individual is about the group, you will win 100% of the time. That means checking egos at the door. If someone shows up and they're having an off day, who's going to rally around them to help them win? If somehow the business is not doing what it needs to do from a profitability perspective, from a quality perspective, what's the individual going to do extra to change that? That combination is, I mean, throughout my career, that's something I learned 30 years ago. And that something has always been a secret ingredient to how we build great culture. People run through walls for us, and we run through walls for them. It goes both ways.
Absolutely. I had a high school football coach, and I shared at the beginning I played college baseball, but football was my love until I blew up my knee. But our freshman year, we were undefeated and ended up losing. Same similar story that I shared with you on baseball last week, but we ended up losing in the playoffs. And from then on out, Coach Romano, who passed away a couple of years ago, um, I'm not saying that this team had that, but he removed and had it removed from our jerseys, the last names on the back of the
Mm.
jerseys. And a lot of people were upset about that, right? Like, this was as far as they were ever going to go, probably in their sports career. But his philosophy was, we're playing for the name on the front of the jersey, not the one on the back. And I think that that speaks to culture, right? Like, I would rather take a team of C players that are all rowing the boat the same way than two A players, and two alphas that are getting in there and just butt heads and make everything miserable, right? And so, I think to your point, everybody on these teams, they buy into the culture, they buy into the company. They're playing for the name on the front of the jersey, not the one on the back. And I think that that's super important. So just a couple more questions, bud, and then we'll get you out of here. I know we're just a little bit over time. How do you foster a culture that values both growth and integrity?
We're fortunate to have a remarkable founder. He's my business partner. He's a remarkable individual. Well, if we started off as an emailer, and the email industry
Mm-hmm.
is full of people that do all kinds of stuff the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
From day
Absolutely.
one, from day one, Tyler has always maintained a level of integrity and about what he's willing and not willing to do. And I know we just talked about this, but it's so true. When when Amy operates with the integrity that she has, it spreads through everybody else. And here's where that shows
Yeah.
up. When you are a leader that has values and they're spoken about, when you are a leader that has, we're going to do this way and not that way, and you speak about it a lot, when you're not able to make a decision because you're off working on something else, and that person inside the organization has a choice to make, they're going to know what you would do as a
Yep.
leader, and that's how they'll behave. And so leadership is not about just measuring activity. Leadership is about participation in values. Like, if you ask anybody on my team and you said, does Dan micromanage you? They would be like, what? No way. Oh yeah, I micromanage the craziness out of our business. Nobody knows it. Same with Tyler. Same with Andy. Because same with Ryan. Because what happens? Same with Romano. Because what happens is we go shoulder to shoulder with everybody we're working with. We don't ask them what they're up to. It's not task orientated. It's problem solving together. And I
Yep.
think that culturally, that's really, really important to grow a business. Starts with leadership. Starts with the person who started the business.
Yep, I completely agree with you. It starts from the top, right? Are you going to be a leader that's a task driver that's sitting in the back of the chariot and is cracking the whip, or are you going to be the one that's helping pull them through whatever issue that they're working on? Well, Dan, this has been a pleasure. I have one last question, and then just kind of kick it over to you for any last remarks. But this is one that I always like to end on. What's one piece of advice that you'd give to firms trying to modernize their marketing and operation today?
Embrace discipline. Really important. Don't just look at money, right? Embrace the idea of technology. Embrace training. Train customers, train claimants, train employees. And then by far, go an extra mile for your client and their customers. If you do that, you're going to build a reputation that'll stick with you for a long, long time, and you'll have a business. You won't just have a hobby.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, man. It kind of goes back to deliver the view that the client wants, right? Like, that's just
Mm-hmm.
been embedded into my DNA from the beginning. And people remember the way that you treat them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've always thought of myself as being client centric versus company centric, and that's caused me to butt heads with people in the past. But I was like, wait, let's pump the brakes. Let me explain why. Right? If I'm being if I'm being client centric, I'm actually being company centric because I'm giving them the warm and fuzzies. I'm delivering the view that they want, which they're going to come back and they're going to spend their hard earned dollars with us. So by being client centric, I'm actually being company centric. And if you just do things the right way, people trust you. people want to work with you, and they know that if you tell them anything, that you're telling them the truth, right? And I think that's been kind of the overarching theme of this today is kind of delivering the view that the client wants. Well, Dan, this has been an absolute pleasure. We've threatened to do this for a while, and I'm glad that we were able to do it today. We have a couple more minutes. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about before we jump off?
I'd just like to, thanks for the opportunity to spend some time with you today, Nick.
Absolutely, my
I
pleasure.
love, I love the times that we get to send. And, it's a funny thing, like you do embody what I think this industry needs to become and is becoming. Integrity, willingness to share ideas and collaborate, I think has been something that you really, really do well at. You gave me a nugget last time we met in person. You probably don't even remember it, but you shape shift the way that we answer or ask a question inside of our flow.
Oh, the 5 out of 10 question. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I thank you for that. It's been an improvement for us. But just the way
Awesome.
that you and Amy, kudos to you. If you're listening, kudos to you. I wanted to go after Nick and you beat me to it. So kudos to you. But I look forward to spending a lot of time with you, Nick, and an email
Absolutely.
agency over time, and in the end, really just helping as many claimants as we can get what they deserve.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm sure we're going to chat again later this week, but
Yeah.
thank you for coming on the Logic Exchange. Again, everybody out there, if you made it this far, thank you. Please like and subscribe. We're going to be doing, 1 to 2 of the, well, maybe 2 to 3 of these a month, with people that I truly respect in this space, and I respect their opinions. As well as what they've done in the space. And Dan, you absolutely embody that. Thank you. And man, this is a great way to spend a little over an hour. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks,
Awesome.
Nick.
Thanks,
Appreciate
buddy.
you. All
Yep.
right.
Yep. Take
Bye.
care, bud. Bye bye.